With nearly 200 hunts in Britain, fox hunting at present shows no signs of dying out. But its long-term future looks more precarious because of a growing movement which argues that the sport is cruel and should be banned. Leicestershire has always been the eye of Hunting England, and of an estimated national total of 35,000 hunt subscribers, 2,000 hunt in the county.
Well, they hunt for many different reasons. They enjoy seeing hounds work. They like the thrill and danger of crossing country at speed. They like companionship, the fresh air, and the access they get to private land which they wouldn't otherwise have. An awful lot of people who go hunting are farmers, but there are a great many people who mainly live in towns and cities who imagine that hunting comprises only rich people. They unfortunately don't understand the cycle of life and death, the way of the countryside, and appreciate that it is necessary in the best interest of the fox to control its numbers.
Well, you see, the RSPCA is totally opposed to the hunting of any wild animal by using dogs. Now, we consider that totally inhumane method of control of any wild animal, and in particular the fox. Our inspected officers have on occasions come across foxes which, when they've been autopsied, have in fact died from heart failure. Now, with regard to farmland and farmers in particular, it again is a misconception that foxes take lambs. A study conducted in Scotland over a wide area has shown up very clearly that foxes take something like 0.5% of lambs. What they do feed on, of course, are dead lambs, the carrion. And one way of controlling the fox in that respect, of course, is to remove the carrion as soon as it occurs, thereby controlling the fox population. It's always been said that the fox is a nuisance and that therefore there should be some form of control. But one would have to look at methods far more effective than hunting.
The 3-year investigation funded by the League Against Cruel Sport suggests that foxes need less control by any method, let alone hunting, than had previously been thought. Fox hunters remain unconvinced.
The fox would still be controlled. It would be shot and gassed and trapped and snared, all of which in our view are far less humane ways of controlling the fox population than hunting with hounds.
Hunting continues from November, when the harvest is gathered, until April, when new crops begin to grow. There are currently 5 hunts in Leicestershire, and one or other meet every day of the week except Sunday. The status of the various hunts and the quality of the country over which they ride is hotly debated. Probably the most well-known hunt in England is the Quorn, with whom the Prince of Wales still often rides. They usually hunt with around 35 foxhounds, counted in matched couples, with an odd one for luck. One of the most expensive hunts to ride with, the Quorn hunts 4 days a week, and to subscribe for just one of those days costs £1,000. That's over and above the costs of horses, horse boxes, livery and tack. The Quorn's country, currently most of northwestern Leicestershire, was first hunted by a Thomas Boothby in the late 17th century. He handed the reins to Hugo Mennell, the acknowledged father of English hunting. Mennell built the hunt's first kennels at Quorndon in 1753, was master of the hunt for the rest of the century, and bred the fastest hounds in the country. It was to him that hunting owed the mid-morning meat. He preferred to hunt foxes which had digested their overnight meal because they ran faster and thus provided better sport. Though never intended as a spectator sport, from the top of Muxlow Hill near the village of Hickling, overlooking the Vale of Belvoir, whole episodes of a hunt can be watched without moving from one spot. The hunt have followed a fox along the valley, and it's taken refuge in a spinney. Under the control of the huntsman, the hounds move in to draw, that is, search the area, which could have been woodland, a patch of gorse, or even the nearby farm buildings. As the main field waits, whippers in posted around the area keep the hounds together and watch out for the fox. The fox breaks cover and the hounds give chase as the huntsman blows "Gone away" on his horn. The field follow. If the fox is wily and can confuse the hounds, it will get away. Its devices are many, running along hedgerows, through mud or manure, amongst herds of cows or flocks of sheep, crossing other foxes' tracks. The hunters say they kill 1 in 10 foxes. Their opponents say the figure is more like 1 in 3. The pack may catch its fox in the open, or it may go to earth, and it is for the master to decide whether or not to call in the terrier men. These employees of the hunt use fox terriers to bolt the fox, that is, dislodge it so that it can be chased again. If it refuses to bolt, perhaps because it's physically incapable or defending its lair, then the terriers keep it at bay while the terrier men dig down to it. It is then shot with a humane killer. All hunts have days when they don't kill a fox. Indeed, there are days when most riders don't even see one. But it is clear that the escape of a fox is as welcome to most spectators as the sight of the hounds in full cry across the countryside. But with following numbers of as many as 150 riders for the more popular venues, damage to fences during the chase is inevitable. The hunts are often accused of a cavalier attitude to the land over which they ride. And so, as the hunt moves on, the fence mender, another employee of the hunt, moves in.
Fox hunting is cruel, it's vicious, it desensitizes people. There's absolutely no need for it whatsoever, and I think that we'd be a far better society if we didn't have this cruelty around. These people are supposed to be from the cultural elite, and if they actually gave us a lead and showed that they weren't cruel people, then I'm sure that we'd be a far better world.
In 1983, a national opinion poll showed that 65% disapproved of hunting foxes with a pack of hounds. Gallup polls too asked people whether they would approve or disapprove of Parliament outlawing fox hunting. Those opposed to a ban fell from 30% in 1972 to 16% in 1986.
It continues because a few people have a lot of power. This is not a matter of farming, it's not about the fox. It's a class issue. 2 working class people cannot, by law, have a fair fight between 2 dogs. Quite rightly, they're not allowed to do that. But if you're upper class, you can set a pack of dogs onto another animal with impunity. That has to be a class issue. It's not about foxes.
The Cottesmore hunt began in the Lake District. In 1666, Lord Lowther brought his hounds to hunt in Rutland and Leicestershire, and it was from him that the pioneer Hugo Mennell bought hounds to establish the Quorn hunt. Land enclosures and the change from arable to grassland farming helped the Cottesmore become one of the most sporting hunts in the area. Slopes are steep and fences formidable and demand much more from both rider and horse, and so does the present joint master of the Cottesmore, Captain Brian Fanshawe.
I love the hounds, and I love the whole sort of organisation with the countryside and seeing the foxes and seeing the hounds perform well. And producing a good pack of hounds and producing a tremendous amount of enjoyment for all sorts of different people.
All the hunts have their fans, although there aren't many like this supporter of the beaver hunt, who actually follow on foot. Membership of supporters' associations in Leicestershire alone runs to nearly 12,000, and the roads and verges around a hunt are often choked with sometimes up to 200 car followers. Many take a day off work to watch their favourite hunt, others follow a different hunt every day of the week. Most seem willing to make a roadside donation to the local supporters association for their day out. Not everyone can afford the luxury of four-wheel drive. Some follow on too.
I like the exercise, the fresh air, the atmosphere, the history, the tradition. It gets me out and about. It's part of that long English tradition. You meet some friends and have a good day. I find it very enjoyable.
The beaver hunt dates from the mid-18th century and hunt in Leicestershire and Lincolnshire 4 days a week. Among hunting circles, it's generally agreed that the purebred English beaver foxhounds are the most beautiful in the world. Such perfection owes much to a continuity of management and careful breeding for over a century. The kennels are still at Belvoir Castle, and the Dukes of Rutland were masters of the hunt for 150 years. Not everyone is so passionate in support of the hunt, and parallel with the modern animal rights movement has been the growth of the Hunt Saboteurs Association. Their spokesman asked not to be identified.
What we do is we go out there when the hunt are going out killing the foxes and hares up to 4 times a week. We use the same tactics as the huntsman uses to control hounds. That is using our voice, using the whips and using the horn. What we do is we bring the hounds over towards us, away from any main roads so they don't get injured, and as long as the hound's with us, they can't kill any animals. As long as we know about the hunt, we can anticipate which way they're going to go. We anticipate which way the fox is going to go. You've got to learn about a fox, its ways, its habits. But that way we can keep up with them. Very, very rare we'd see a kill. It's probably 2 or 3 times a season. It's very often a situation where we can't get anywhere near the hunt.
The Saboteurs have about 2,500 members up and down the country. They are the shock troops in the continuing battle against fox hunting. Their tactics include spraying a mixture of aniseed and lemon juice over hedgerows to confuse the hounds. They are still the most vocal minority, but the hunters are finding it more difficult to shut the door on the growing anti-hunt lobby. A motion at the National Trust's AGM to ban fox hunting was narrowly defeated by only 6,000 of over 130,000 votes. It was, however, acknowledged that prohibition would alienate the trust from its tenant farmers. The Leicester-based Cooperative Wholesale Society have banned fox hunting on the 30,000 acres of its farming land, 5,000 of it in South Leicestershire. The Society feel obliged to listen to the consensus of opinion and add, it is a practice we could do without. Lincoln City Council has passed a charter for animal welfare, which includes a ban on all blood sports on its land. It accepts that pests need to be controlled, but adds such activity should employ only humane methods and should never be treated as sport. The Church of England Synod was asked to revise critically hunting for sport. The motion was defeated and decisions left to individual tenants. A working party was set up to assess the Christian attitude to the environment. Not all churchmen are as undecided. Witness the vicar of St Peter's in Loughborough and a supporter of the Charnwood campaign against blood sports.
Seems to me that fox hunting is a way of making respectable that thing which I think is in all of us, which picks on the weak and then hunts it and chases it. Preferably something that we actually love or like, that's beautiful. Fox is very beautiful. And I think a lot of pro-fox hunting people will say that they actually love nature, and that's why they hound it to death. Now, that which is in people, which is something to do with how we go all gung-ho when there's a war on, I think is not to be made respectable, and that's what fox hunting does.
Loughborough's marketplace has staged an annual meet of the Quorn hunt since 1894, but not everyone views it as a colourful English tradition. And for the past 5 years, the Charnwood campaigners against blood sports have held a silent vigil against the spectacle.
They can still have the gallop, they can still wear all of the clothes if they go drag hunting, so they're still retaining the tradition, it's just the kill. So they can't say that we're trying to take the tradition away.
Drag hunting's a non-starter because the farmers wouldn't have drag hunting on their land. It serves no purpose. And the people who go hunting think that drag hunting bears as much resemblance to real hunting as blow football does to the World Cup.
Nonetheless, there are 11 registered drag hunts in Britain and the Channel Islands, and one, like that held in Cambridge, nearly 150 years old. The trail setters can be as cunning as any fox, giving the hounds a good run without, of course, losing the scent, but they can avoid growing crops or fields with animals in them, and make sure the route doesn't involve taking the hounds over roads or through barbed wire. They can also choose challenging or easy jumps to suit the skills of the following riders. The capital of the hunting country in Leicestershire is Melton Mowbray. From the time of Hugo Mennel, this was the fashionable place to come and hunt, and rich young men flocked here from all parts. They had little respect for the place, and aristocratic hooligans of the hunting fraternity literally painted the town red in 1837, an escapade recorded for posterity in the town museum. Over 300 hunters were stabled in the area, wives were generally excluded, and it was said that the night air over Melton Mowbray trembled with the sighs of adulterers. Melton's town square marks the boundaries of the three hunts, and since 1983 the town estate has revived the custom of providing the stirrup cup to each hunt in rotation at the New Year meet.
It was felt, being the centre, we wanted to reintroduce the spectacle of the hunt into the town centre. I think you really have to be here to enjoy it, a nice bright day like this, with the clatter of the horses' hooves and the dogs going to town. It's quite exciting. It's a spectacle that you really have to be here to enjoy.
The estate welcomed plans for a museum of hunting in the extended Melton Museum. The cost, £250,000, will be raised by public appeal, but hackles have also been raised.
I think one member of the anti-hunt lobby actually said it'd be a good thing if all hunting was put in a museum. I'm not worried about it. We're not trying to set up some propaganda centre for hunting. We're trying to tell a story about the history of the county and the country, and we're trying to tell it in a balanced way. If we were setting up some sort of monument to say hunting is the greatest thing since sliced bread, which I'm sure it is to some people and not to others, that would be different. But our aim is to say something about the origins of hunting, something about hunting in the landscape, because particularly in Leicestershire, the Leicestershire landscape to a large extent is moulded by the requirements of hunting. Also, we'd like to say something about the crafts that have been brought on by hunting, boot making, saddlery, even the production of buttons, things like that. We're also going to cover the campaign against hunting, which has a longer past than just the recent. So we've covered every aspect we can.
The movement against fox hunting is a very important part of the history of hunting, and that is all going to be faithfully reproduced. Do you know, I've got the letter that the Secretary of the Devonshire Agricultural Society sent to the Clerk of the House of Commons in 1928 with a cheque for £25 asking him could he get a member to attend on a Friday, because people didn't attend on Fridays in those days, to object to the first anti-hunting bill. Now that's the sort of letter that wants recording for posterity. That's going in the museum.
This is Thomas Boothby's hunting horn, and he was the first person to keep a pack of hounds for hunting. He developed a lot of the early forms of hunting. He was born in 1677, and he hunted in this area. And this is the horn that was presented to him for his hunting exploits. So the horn is about 250 years old. So we're very proud of this. This is something that marks the origin of hunting in Leicestershire.
The hunts people have all the best tunes. They have the pretty uniforms, the animals, the paintings, the literature. Those opposed to fox hunting don't have anything like that. To provide an unbiased view, I think, is going to be very difficult.
Melton owes much of its wealth to hunting, and the famous pork pie is said to have gained favour due to its convenience as a rider's snack. There's Melton Hunt Cake too, sold as the ideal partner for the stirrup cup. But with a local history so steeped in the saddle, is the borough making the most of its heritage?
I think it's something that has been left by the wayside, possibly because of the anti-fox hunting lobby and the fears that that might cause people to think negatively of the area. Essentially here we have a rural tourism product, and that is what we're trying to sell to potential visitors to the region. We have beautiful countryside, Belvoir Castle, a market town. And of course, fox hunting has played a great part in shaping the heritage of the area.
Stapleford Park, once the home of Lord Gretton and now a luxury hotel, is owned by an American. While not believing that hunting needs to be promoted any more than it currently is, he has no doubts as to its tourist potential.
It's been here forever, and it should be here forever. It is part of the tradition of this countryside. And as a foreigner, I can tell you that most of the foreigners who come from all over the world, if they could only see one thing, they would love to see fox hunting in Leicestershire. It's better than the changing of the guard. It's better than the crown jewels. It's what they think England is all about. Reality or fantasy, it's the one thing that today they can see that is just like it was 100 years ago.
The continuation of hunting depends on the ability of one group of people to ride over another's land. They count on the support of farmers, many of whom still invite the hunt onto their property to control what they consider to be a pest. Gamekeepers too welcome the hunt, and although it may be debatable whether foxes take lambs, they certainly do cause great damage to ground-nesting game birds being bred for the shooting season.
I think that the anti-blood sport thing is mostly about class. As an outsider to this thing, the people that I know who hunt, most of them are just folks. They're the local physician, they're the local estate agents, they're the local housewives, they're the local small businessmen. It's not about Lord and Lady How's your father and the Earl of this and the Duke of that. I mean, a few of those come and hunt, but a few of them go to Wembley for soccer and a few of them go to rock concerts and the rest of it. And I think it's an absolute nonsense, this anti-fox hunting thing. It's a crime against not the people who ride, but the people who follow, because I think the people who are really being cheated are the ones who get in their cars and they pack their picnic lunch and they take a mug of coffee and they go around, and that's their day's outing. And I don't think it's right that anybody should disturb the peace and serenity of the followers, much less the riders.
I don't consider fox hunting to be a sport. I consider it to be a barbaric practice. After all, I don't go to football in order to see people killed on the football pitch. From time to time, some nasty accidents have taken place, but that wasn't the part of the spectacle. It wasn't part of the game to actually go around killing things. And since fox hunting is really, in the end, about killing something, large numbers of people and dogs and horses all chasing after one small, terrified, furry creature does not seem to me to be an activity that merits the description of sport.
Occasionally, hounds get where they're not welcome. This beaver pack hot on the scent of a fox running into a paddock, causing alarm to a mare in foal and indeed its owner. In the event, a possible embarrassment is averted by a hasty rounding up of the hounds and an apologetic departure of the hunt. The hunts pride themselves on their contribution to the making of the Leicestershire countryside in the past and its preservation today. They cite year-long work on covert trimming, the elimination of barbed wire, the cutting and laying of hedges. The Leicestershire and Rutland Trust for Nature Conservation administers some 3,500 acres of land in hunting country.
We take a fairly even view about it, with 5,000 members, probably equally split between 2,500 for and 2,500 against. We've had to be very careful on our policy. Personally, I think it's quite disgusting that you've got to kill animals, but at the same time I appreciate that it is something that's been going on for many years and it's a sport, and I play different sorts of sport and people don't like what I do, but we've got excellent relations with all of the hunts in Leicestershire at the moment, simply because we've got a policy. And we say to them, look, if you come on our land, it's a nature reserve, you do as we tell you. And I think they gradually realise that things that they don't think are important, like a bed of orchids from the top of a horse, don't look ever so important, to us is very, very important. And if they're prepared to steer their way round it, then we're going to leave them alone.
The threat to fox hunting comes from the Labour Party, and the risk that the Labour Party might be unwise enough to describe a bill banning fox hunting as a government bill and to whip it.
What I'm doing is putting down a quite clear marker, hoping and in fact feeling fairly confident that it will be taken up by the next Labour government and made into government policy, because Labour Party now has policy that says that we will, on a free vote in the House of Commons, put forward legislation banning fox hunting, deer hunting and all other hunting with dogs.
I think that we'd find that if there were an attempt to ban fox hunting or any form of hunting, that you'd find that there were particularly very many Northern Labour MPs who found that there was very strong and wide and deep working class support for hunting.
I can tell you this, if Neil Kinnock and all the shadow cabinet were involved in fox hunting, which I know none of them are and don't support, I would still be putting forward the legislation. There are many hunts, I understand, up in the northeast, in Northumberland, that are miners' hunts. I would ban those with just as cheerful and as easy conscience as I would ban the upper class twits who go riding in the Quantox.
If fox hunting were to be banned, what would happen to the employment of all those people who are in and around horses? The stables would fall into disrepair. We have what are reputed to be the finest stables in the country still in use. Well, if there was no horses and no hunting, then those stables would become derelict. They'd either fall down or they'd be converted into something else. And the other people who work, the vets, the people who supply the tack, all the rest of it, it would be industries that would die. I believe not only would there be a hell of a lot of people not having a good time in the countryside, like the ones who follow and the ones who ride, but more importantly, there would be a great dearth of employment.
It is an old established part of the countryside, and I think a lot of the objection is not necessarily to the kill, it's to the arrogant attitude of some of the people who come into the countryside and hunt. I hope that they're going to accept there are certain rules that are laid down by landowners and people in the countryside on the way the hunt shall manage themselves and the way that they'll go about things, and I think a compromise will be reached.
It has to be acknowledged that fox hunting has gone some way towards building the countryside we have. We have hedges in Leicestershire, not walls for that reason, and many other aspects, but they don't presently conserve anything.
It's got nothing to do with catching the fox. It's got more to do with chasing after a bunch of people who are on a bunch of horses who are following a bunch of dogs who are trying to find the silly fox. And to be at one with your horse in the countryside and to get out of the countryside where you would never ever get on foot or in the car is just spellbinding.
We are opposed to any form of hunting by packs of dogs for any wild animal, and we feel that if there had been no fox hunting and it was proposed, say, in the 1990s that this should be a new sport, then I think there would be a public outcry. It's only the historical basis, really, that maintains fox hunting.
If your hounds aren't going to kill reasonably regularly, they will lose their alertness. I mean, that's their job, that's what they're bred for, and that's what they want to do. But we don't count our days as successful according to how many foxes we've caught. At least I don't.
It is simply uncivilised and barbaric. It inflicts great suffering on creatures. It debases the animals themselves, and I think it debases the individuals that take part. So that's why, one amongst many reasons, I want to see it banned.
Well, the people who oppose hunting have been deliberately and persistently misrepresenting it for a great many years. So what I would say to people who oppose hunting is this. Come out, see it for yourself, make up your own mind, and then you'll know who's telling the truth about it.